Ministry Podcast, where three of the OKS youth ministers talk about youth ministry. I'm Michael Deese, and I am joined by Hunter Puckett and Jeremy Crow.
Good morning, Michael. It's so good to hear you and for you to hear me through my microphone.
Do you want to restart?
No, that to see you in person.
It is good. It is good to be back. I will say I'm glad you guys had an exposure youth conference and it went great. I hated recording from a undisclosed remote location.
I bet.
It was frustrating. I felt like I was interrupting you constantly, and it was just aggravating.
Well, it wasn't as fun on our end either. It was cool to be able to record at the conference, but it was also very stressful with so many people walking by while you're just talking.
And there was a lot of distractions.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to keep my mind on stuff. I just kept going, oh, there's that guy, there's that guy, there's that guy. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be talking.
And something that I think almost every youth minister I know has just a hint of like ADD going on or something. So we really struggle with focusing and paying attention for a long time. Speaking of paying attention for a long time, we're talking about doing something for a long time, longevity in ministry, and not just longevity in like the span that you've worked in ministry, but staying in the same place for multiple years. It's kind of an anomaly in youth ministry that guys stay at the same place for a really long time.
You would think that as time moves on, that the number of youth ministers staying at churches for long times has increased, but it's actually gotten shorter. Where whenever I was in school, it was about 2 to 2.5 years was the average length of a youth minister at a church, and now it's almost 1.5 years is what we're at now, which is kind of crazy to think that youth ministers are 1 year, 1.5 years, and then they're gone, and they're doing other things, whether it be ministry or not.
What do you suppose is why that happens? Why they're there for such a short time and then leave? Any ideas?
I think there's a lot of reasons behind that. One, we kind of mentioned it with our trying to get the job episode.
Yeah.
And we talked about just the difference between a new minister coming out of college opposed to somebody that's been in ministry for a handful of years, and just the mental side of it. But then two, it's maybe people realizing that they're on one side realizing they're not really cut out for ministry.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of people falling away that way. And then two, it's they're going places, and then maybe it's they're settling on a smaller congregation, and then they're trying to either get back closer to home or closer to family, or maybe they've found a significant other and they're trying to get closer to her family, whatever that might be. And I feel like they're just leaving for that reason as well.
Yeah.
I think when you have those short spans of time where you work somewhere 2 years, 3 years, whatever, one of the detractors I think in that is you personally don't have to do a lot of growing because the same stuff can be reused again, if that makes sense. Like you can use the same class series, or you can use the same concepts or ideas, and you don't have to get more in depth with what you do because nobody's seen it yet at this new place. And so if you're moving every couple of years, it kind of lets you be a little bit lazy too. I mean, maybe that's too judgmental, but
and churches are noticing that too. I had a church contact me asking about, I don't even know who the guy was. They just asked if I knew him. I said, I don't know him. They said, well, he's been at 6 different congregations. I said, well, how long has he been in ministry? 8 years. I'm like, okay. And that was their one concern, was they don't think that if they hire him that he's going to stay around long enough to really plant roots into that congregation.
Which is a hard place to be too, because if you are trying to do that and get planted, and there's times where you just get in a bad situation. Maybe you realize after hiring in, it's a bad scenario and you don't need to stay there. You don't need to be there, and you need to go somewhere. And I think we talk about that on a later episode. I think we should have a conversation about when it is time to leave and how do you do that with grace. But it may just be that the guy's had a hard situation and he's trying to find that place to find longevity. But
yeah, there's times where, I've had friends that have started youth ministry jobs and they were there for a year, 1.5 years, and they left, and it was just not a good culture fit, And then as soon as they left, they found a place that they fit.
Yeah.
And they've been there. Like I've got somebody on my mind right now.
Yeah.
And he's been there for 8 years, I think. And the first church they worked with, it was just very brief, because it just wasn't a good fit,
Well, and two, I don't want to downplay the youth ministers or any minister deciding to do that. There are some times where you've kind of hit that roof of your potential at that church.
Right.
Where they're only going to allow you to do so much. The budget's only going to allow you to do so much, and you're wanting to do more. So, a lot of times you have to seek out for those churches that are going to allow you to do more.
Yeah.
And that is part of it as well.
Let's talk about for us three guys, what longevity-wise, I want to say, Michael, maybe you've been somewhere 7 years was your longest time to be somewhere?
Yeah, it's about 6.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been at Coleman now 8 years. I'm on my way towards 9. You've been at Flint how long?
On my way towards 7.
Okay.
And then this summer will be 10 years as far as county internship as well.
Yeah. So, and you've always been at Flint, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we have some experience with that. When do you say you're kind of passing into that, what we would call longevity? What, year 2, year 3? When are you starting to see benefits of longevity?
I mean, honestly, you start seeing, the longer that you're there, you start seeing benefits of being there for a long time. But where you start really seeing the difference, where you're able to make a big impact in a lot of different ways, is right around the 6-year mark. That's kind of been my experience, right around 6 years. You have had kids come into your youth group and they're about to graduate.
Yeah.
And that's, and the culture of the youth ministry is yours. I mean, that's the culture of the youth ministry. You have built that youth ministry culture, and there's not a kid in the youth group who never had you as a youth minister. You're the only guy that they've had. 6th grade, 7th grade, whenever they come in, and so I think that's where it really just starts. You're really able to make a huge impact, and we're going to talk about the different things that being in that area. Would y'all agree, or would y'all say?
Yeah,
I'd say it's the 2 cool times. It might be I'm working on year 8. Now it's all kind of fuzzy. But the 2 cool times was the first time you had that graduating class that had gone all through high school.
Right.
9th grade to 12th grade. And then for me, the second one was getting to see that 6th grader when I first started full time to graduate.
Yeah.
And that was neat too. And not only that, but you're there long enough to kind of see the way that the church is and the way that they teach and the way their curriculum is set up. And for me, I waited 6 years before I changed any curriculum for 6th through 12th grade.
Yeah.
I wanted to see really what they learned. I wanted to see how they were going through the entire process. And then from that 6-year mark, like Michael was saying, that's when you can kind of start implementing some things yourselves. You don't want to show up at a church and the first thing you do is change everything.
That's right.
You want to sit there, you want to see what they're doing, you want to see what's working, and then adapt to that. Don't make that church or that ministry adapt to you and your style. Adapt to kind of what they're already doing. And especially if somebody's been there before you and they've left for whatever that reason that might be, and you step into that role, don't change everything immediately. Those kids are used to that.
I've heard the phrase, like, you don't start a ministry job with an agenda, unless that agenda is, I'm going to get more Christians. I'm going to do it, and that needs to be your agenda. So you go in and you don't say, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do all this stuff. You go in and you experience what the youth ministry is like, and then you can start building on it. And so sometimes it looks different. Sometimes you keep and implement the same thing. Sometimes you change things up. It's just a matter of how you want to do it.
One of the things when we were in Tullahoma, I came in and the guy that was before me had been there for 15 years, and he had not left. He had moved into a different position, so he had incredible longevity. There was consistency in the youth ministry. Gary was doing a great job with it. He actually went into ministry, into counseling with his ministry, and so 3 years before he was going to resign as a youth minister, he let the eldership know, in 3 years you need to have my replacement hired. And give him his 3-year notice. And so when he left and I came in and took over the reins, one of the things I did was I kept a lot of things that Gary was already doing. Gave salute to those things. I didn't want to say, hey, I know more than you and I've got this change, because really he was doing a great job. And so one of the things that I did in those first couple of years to kind of maybe establish my opportunity for longevity was giving salute to the guy before me, recognizing that these kids are not really my kids. They're his kids still.
Exactly.
When it came around to senior graduation, banquet, recognition, all that, I would ask Gary, for those first 4 years, all of those high school classes, I asked Gary to come in and him talk to the students as the youth minister role, as part of our program. Because, they had that longevity with him. That's one of the things that I think matters a lot. The longer you stay at a place, you stay at the same place and you work there, the deeper that relationship grows with your students and with their families.
I think that's the number one thing. You become their go-to person. You become the person that they talk to, that they're comfortable with, that they that they want to talk to. They want to know your opinion on these things that are going on in their life. And I think that all comes down to the biggest impact that you're going to have in a youth ministry is the relationships that you build with the youth group. The kids in the youth group. There was Andy Frizzell who he did youth ministry for a long time. I think he's counseling now. I don't know if he's still doing youth ministry or not. But he said you start seeing yourself and your kid in your youth group. They take on your personality, and when they start taking on your personality, you know that you're making a difference. And he said, because when he got to a church one time, they were all about just, they were having fun and stuff, but they weren't very deep thinking youth group. And he said there was a day where they had a Bible study and they were just reading scripture. And he said that was kind of their devo. And he said, I'm kind of a weird guy. That's just, he said, I like to read scripture and just think deeply and contemplate about it. And he said it was a day where a kid came in and he was just like, let's just read scripture and just kind of meditate on it. And he was just like, this is not characteristic of this kid. This is not what high school kids do, Right. And he said that was the moment that I realized I was making an impact, know. And so when they start taking on your personality, or the way that you do things, and they start kind of singing, that's the way he reads the scripture, that's the way I'm going to do it.
One of the things that I think is, at least for me in Coleman, I'm starting to see this now. I'm in year 8, they're going into 9, and I've had students that, were in 4th grade and 5th grade, and I baptized, at camp. And now, I'm seeing them in their 11th grade year of school, and they're in these, very involved relationships, with a boyfriend and girlfriend they're bringing to church, or they're looking at where am I going to go to college, or we've gone through, the loss of a family member together, and I've been there at the funeral, or I've had students that I had the opportunity to baptize as a 9th, 10th grader that I've done their wedding, 4 or 5 years later. Yeah. It's really cool, kind of being there in these kind of formative moments throughout their life. I think one of the things that we reflect on often in youth ministry is how important it is for students. And I think Fuller Institute really hits on this a lot, how important it is to have that stable, consistent adult influence in the life of a child.
Yes.
And in their formative years as a teenager. And this kind of longevity plays into that.
Well, and I think what kind of summing up what both of y'all said is the youth minister becomes the constant in their lives. And not only the kids' lives, the parents' lives. And when we're the constant, they know we're always there. They know that when they do have this problem, when they do have this issue, when they do need somebody to talk to, you're going to be there, no matter what that situation is. And just with you being there, being present within the kids' lives, within the parents' lives, that's where you see this connection grow. Yeah. Over time, however this is, you see that grow. You go from what Jeremy said. You go from baptizing this kid at Maywood Christian Camp to 5 or 6 years later, you're officiating their wedding.
Yeah,
because you're the constant in their lives, and sadly, you might be the only constant in their lives. Let's take the parent side out of it. There are a lot of kids that don't have that constant parent, but they know that you're going to be consistent with the way that you love them and the way you care for them, and that's going to mean a lot more to them. Knowing that you're there for the long run in their life.
When you're there for a long time and you're working with the same kids, you're just given a lot more opportunities to discuss things with them, to talk with them, milestones that they've reached, graduations and weddings and all that kind of stuff. You get to be a part of that person's life. And over time, as that continues on, you more or less become a third parent. We'll call it a youth minister third wheel, and you're trusted by the family. They want their kid to be around you because you're a positive influence, and you just become part of the family, basically. I know, when I think back at my youth ministry days and stuff, that was a huge deal to me because I had somebody that I was comfortable talking with. And I had my parents that were very, they raised me to be a Christian and made sure I was going to youth group functions and stuff. But that was because they partnered with the youth minister and wanted to do things for their kids.
Well, and the way you say that, the longer you're there, the more your legacy builds. And I don't mean the legacy within the brotherhood, the legacy within that church.
Yeah.
That when they see Michael and they see the way that Michael's handling these kids, these younger parents do, and they have their kids, they're excited for them to get to the youth group because you've built up the youth group. You have this standard for the youth group. You have these expectations for these kids and for these parents. By the time they get to 6th grade, whenever time Hartsville actually pulls up their kids, when they get to 6th grade, they kind of had this expectation because you've made that legacy.
Yeah.
You've built the youth group. You've built, we'll just say, the expectations of the youth group themselves.
You've created a vision.
Yeah.
You've created a vision of what you want that to look like, what you want this youth ministry to look like, and the goals that you are accomplishing are very evident at that point. And it's not just you seeing the goals and you seeing how things are going, but the church starts seeing it too, and they buy in.
Yeah.
And getting to that point where the church buys in to what you're doing, that's where you start seeing real growth. And that usually takes 5 or 6 years in order for them to get to the level of trust and knowing that you're going to be there and that you're consistent and being able to trust that you're gonna make that impact.
One of the things I think that the longevity plays into is how effective we become with time. Not just with the relationships, but I become better at reading and understanding the culture of what's happening in that congregation, of understanding what the family dynamics are like in that place. For us, when I was in Tullahoma, it was a lot of transplant families or transient families where they're moving into the community. They were around an Air Force base. A lot of people stayed there for a short time, then they moved to another job. There was a lot of connection between people because they didn't have close family. Whereas at Coleman, we're in some families 3, maybe even 4 generations of family attending church together. And so it's a different culture, a different feel. And so you learn those kind of things. You begin to become aware and understand what this church's culture looks like, what kind of needs they have, how you can address those needs. It helps us be more effective in our teaching. It helps us better understand what kind of things are needing to be taught to these students. What kind of things are they getting in the home and what are they not? And what can we supplement into that?
I just remember, we started attending the church that Jeremy was working at. I think I was in 8th or 9th grade. Do you remember what grade I
think
was
you were 16, but I may be wrong.
Okay, so I was probably just starting 10th grade. Just starting 10th grade, yeah.
10th grade.
And I remember the consistency of, I knew who the preacher was and I knew who the youth minister was, and that wasn't gonna change. And having that consistency and knowing the kind of things that we talked about, the things that we discussed, and knowing that I had somebody that I could lean on when I was, going through whatever situation I was going through, and that I had somebody there and to talk to and discuss things with. It's a cool deal when you start picking up on the way the culture was. The whole "I'm from Hebron" thing, that was awesome. That was so long ago, but that was so cool because you were proud of it, and it was all because of the way that the ministry did, the church culture, and the way that everything was done. And it takes time to build that. You don't just come into that.
And I think too, as students become more comfortable with who you are, their wall comes down. I think in that first couple of years, they might go to things, they might have fun and cut up with you, but they're not going to talk to you about what they're really struggling with or what thing is really weighing on them in that first couple of years, because they don't know that they can trust that you're going to be there, you're going to be consistent, that you're going to be with them through that. They don't know that you might have a foot out the door headed to another job, right? And so when you hit that kind of consistent longevity thing, walls start to come down with the students and their relationship with you.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking from my experience, coming in as a new youth minister, one fresh out of college, the congregation is going to judge you a little bit. We'll be honest. They're going to look at you. They're going to say, "Hey, you're this young guy. You don't know near as much as the preacher." And I'll admit, I still don't know near as much as the preacher. But they're going to look at you as this lesser person. They're not going to really buy into anything you're doing because you have no idea what's going on. You're brand new to ministry. How would you understand all of these things? And you're 20 years old, 21 years old. How can you understand, or how can you tell me how to better parent my kid? You don't even have kids, and now I only have a 2-year-old, so it's still not in that same boat. But I think when we see this longevity, you start to see these parents open up. You start to see the church leaders open up. You start to see the congregation open up, and they start to really, and we mentioned this earlier, they really start to buy into your ministry. That it might take some time, and regardless if you're new into ministry or just new into that area or that church, it's going to take some time to gain that trust, and to show the church your vision for ministry. But the longer you stay there, the more that they're going to see that vision, the more that they're going to buy into that vision, and become a huge team or actually a huge congregation and supporter of your mission.
That you're young and dumb kind of mentality that congregations tend to have, and as that longevity grows, your eldership begins to dissuade that with the congregation. They start to be in your corner and say, hey, we're behind what he's doing. We agree with the direction he's taking this. You may not like it right now, but be patient with him because we've seen growth from what he's doing in this, and I think that's such a big deal when you start to have the eldership kind of in your corner because they trust you, right?
Yeah. When you have the support of your leadership, that's when, you start really seeing an impact because there's a reason why they're called the leaders of the church, the elders of the church. They're the people that are leading the church. We just had our I've been calling it the elders charge or the leadership charge. We discussed all the things that we're going to accomplish in 2025, all the things that we have accomplished in 2024 and did, and then what our plans are for 2025. And we even gave high fives in the middle of this little service thing that we're doing. It was really cool. Phillips was running through. He was like, "Yeah, let's hear it!" And he gave everybody a high five on the front row and stuff. And it was a really good thing because they were very transparent. Here's what we're wanting to do, and we might not reach all these goals, but this is our goals. And we understand that this is a lot, but we know that y'all are able to do it, and it's a big deal. And so, having elders that are bought into the ministries that you're doing, and they're seeing the fruit that's coming from your hard work. That can just transform a ministry. It really can, and it helps the people to buy in to what you're doing. I always try and say something positive that's going on in either my ministry or Justin's ministry. Anytime that I get in front of the church, I say, "Man, Justin is killing it with this series. I have loved it, and he's doing such a great job." And and he does the same for me, and we because we want the church to get excited about the ministries that we're doing, and when they do, they buy in, and then that helps accomplish the goals that you're trying to accomplish.
So let me ask this, Hunter. I think you see some of this for sure where you're at. I'm starting to see it at Coleman. I think still at Hartsel, you're relatively fresh here, but you probably saw this in Arkansas. When we stay in the same place, getting outside of our own church body, our own families, youth, whatever, out in the greater community, when you start to be recognized in town as the youth minister at so-and-so congregation, what kind of benefits or results do we see in the local school, in the community, and in neighborhoods? What kind of things have you seen from being in that role?
This is going to sound like a joke, but it's actually pretty cool. I have a handful of kids that are into theater. So I went to the Christmas concert, and at the time, the card readers weren't working. And I don't carry any cash with me, but the person running that recognized me from being at all the other events. She was like, "Hey, you're the youth minister at the church where," and I'm not going to name the kids' names, but she named some kids. I said, I am, and she just let me walk on in and go sit down. And I thought that was the coolest thing that you get recognized just by being at events. So it's more, and my number one thing for people or youth ministers to realize, when you go to kids' games, sit with the parents. Don't sit with other kids. Sit with the parents, spend time with them. That's a great way for them to see that you're buying into their kid and they can buy into you. But when you do that, you're not only affecting those parents and that family, you're affecting the people around you. They're seeing, and it can be a great evangelism tool too. They're seeing that you're willing to come and take time out of your day to sit down and watch these kids play. And that's a really neat thing. Half my youth group plays tennis for Hartsel High School, and it's very convenient because the tennis coach is the preacher. And that's the cool part too. But like when I show up to those, I already know everybody. It's really cool. But then the parents I don't know, well, my parents are introducing me to them. They're saying, "Hey, this is Hunter, this is our youth minister," and they're getting into like, what do I do and how I help their kids. And it's just a great way for them to reach out and tell other people about us.
Every time that I have ever gone to a game or a performance or whatever, I have always been introduced by the parents of the kids that are participating. Doesn't matter what it is. I'm always, and they always say, hey, this is Michael. I've talked to you about this. This is Michael, and he's our youth minister at where we go to church, and he comes to these games, and he does this, and he does. I mean, every single time. And so that also gets your name out in the community when you're in, walking around in Target shopping, and that family walks by, and they say, hey, you're the youth minister for so-and-so, and then you just kind of sit and talk for a little bit, and that makes a big difference in the community.
Yeah.
So you're not the community of the church only, but also just the community that you're living in. People start to recognize you. They know who you are. They know the impact that you're having on the parents' kids, and they know that you love God and that you're trying to do what's best for their kids too.
Well, and something that's cool, and Michael doesn't know about this, but this is what me and Michael are about to do, or Michael and I are about to do, is we're about to reach out to the school and see if we can't find some sort of way that they can give us a minister card to be able to get into games for free.
Yeah.
And all ministers should be reaching out, trying to figure out a way to do that. I know they have, for Hartselle, they have the Hartselle cards, and you get in like home games, I believe. I could be wrong.
That's
but,
right.
Find something where you can get into games and you can be supported, and find that school system that's going to support you as well. Now, transition a little bit. Michael, let me ask you this. I don't have any experience with this, and you're a little bit newer to this side. How stressful was it for you to just move from Arkansas to Hartselle, Alabama? Like, don't get too much detail, but like, how stressful was that?
It's very. I mean, I had children and a pregnant wife when we moved, and
moving with children is so.
There's just so much
stress.
stuff. There's just so much stuff that you're having to move.
Yeah.
What we
family,
had.
You're uprooting them from school systems, all that.
Yeah.
Now imagine doing that every 2 to 2.5 years,
and that's the life that some people live. That's what it is. And I would not wish that on anyone. And it's just once kids are involved, things get a lot more difficult as far as the moving process goes. And I'm not meaning just a lot of stuff and physically. I'm meaning like the mental drain that it brings, and having to abandon your best friends that you've had for 7 years, and abandoning the relationships that you've built with the teenagers for 7 years,
and their families,
and all of that stuff. And then you have the kids that are in like 4th, 5th, 6th grade that are getting ready to move in, and every spring I would teach that class, the 5th and 6th grade class. And so you're getting to build those relationships, and then you're like, oh man, I can't wait till this kid gets in, and he's going to be able to do a lot of cool stuff. And this kid's really nerdy like me, and so we talk about Pokemon and Harry Potter together, and so like those relationships that you missed out on is a tough thing to deal with. And seeing the different events and different things that they're going to, and you missing out on that stuff is another like mental toll that kind of you don't think about until you're experiencing it. And then but yeah, I mean, it's a difficult thing, and it leads to a lot of ministers just deciding not to be ministers anymore. To just burning out and deciding, I'm just going to do something different. Because
you see the same thing too, not from the minister's side, but from the congregation side. Coleman was the guy before me. Tim was there for I think 6.5 years. But prior to Tim, it was like a slew of guys. It was like 18 months. 2 years, 12 months, 18 months, just back and over and over again. And Tim being there for 6 years prior to me made a huge difference, because had I come into that, the congregation would have been wrecked by that. Like the youth, and he probably inherited a pretty tough program to start with. I wasn't there when he started there, but I can imagine that was a super challenging situation, because the inconsistency of one to the next, to the next, to the next, a congregation kind of checks out from the youth ministry in that way. Mm-hmm. And the students go, well, there's no point in wasting the time. This guy won't be here more than 18 months.
Well, imagine if that was a preacher. Imagine if your congregation had gone through 8 preachers in the past 6 years.
Yeah.
And just the toll that congregation would have.
Yep.
And we can get into the, whys of why do preachers stay a lot longer than youth ministers do. And we can get into pay and things along those lines. But that really affects the congregation. And what we're seeing is it affects a lot more people than just you.
Yeah.
It affects your family. It affects your wife. It affects your kids. It affects the kids in the youth group. The future. I like how Michael pointed out the future kids' youth group. Yeah. They're excited to come and join your youth group that you've built up, and it's like, oh, well, now it's gone.
Well, one of the things we've had where we're at is unique in that I haven't had this experience anywhere else. everybody wants to stay there, if that makes sense, and nobody has a foot out the door, and not that your congregation's ministers are looking for other jobs, but they're not necessarily closed off to it either. Steve, our preacher, is wanting to be in Coleman. He longed to move here, right? I want to be here. I've had job offers at other places. I've had better paying job offers at other places. I've had opportunities that I could have went somewhere else, but it's because I want to be in Coleman. My family's all around here. I want to be here. Leanne, is working with a children's ministry. She wants to be here, right? And so it's kind of a cool, unique thing in that we have a team that collectively knows, well, we don't have to worry about, well, if we work together on this and then he's going to leave. Nobody's foot's out the door. And so it's opening the door for some cool ministry growth that maybe we wouldn't see if we weren't sure about the longevity and continuity of the staff.
Well, and the ministry growth of our area ministers.
Yeah.
We're all able to really get to know each other and really care for each other, knowing that, one day we're not going to wake up and all of a sudden somebody's gone.
Yep.
Right.
That we're all here for longevity. We enjoy this area. We love this area. And that's the joy of being in this area is there's just a lot of, and I mentioned this earlier, there's a lot of consistency when it comes to it. We love what we do and we love why we're here.
And there's, just to kind of, go to the next thing, when you know someone and they're consistent with their behavior, with the way that they conduct themselves, their integrity, and it's a very consistent thing. And sure, there's going to be times where, they might get upset about something and voice that, or they let you down in some way. But when you see a consistency of this person is dependable, trustworthy, they're doing a good job, they're hardworking, they're great teachers, and they see that constant consistency over and over and over, it kind of gives everybody a chance to kind of take a breath and know, like, this person is here, this person's going, we don't have to worry about whether he's going to be here. He's going to be there. He's not going to be late. He's not going to forget to give us information about something. He's going to be consistent. He's going to constant. It's a trustworthy position. And so,
and that comes with time.
That's the only way to do it is time.
At Coleman, the first year or two, we were doing the senior graduation banquet, and there was some moms that were really like overstepping and planning a bunch of things. No offense, ladies. They were just like blowing me up about stuff. And I finally pulled one of them aside and I said, I need you to know you can trust me to do a good job with this. Now, in her defense, she didn't know me and she didn't know I would do a good job.
Right.
Now she trusts me in that, and she, doesn't tell me, hey, this is how you should do it, this is how you should do it, because she knows she can trust that I'm going to do my job.
Yeah.
But until I had that connection and that respect and that longevity, she didn't know that, right?
Right.
Oh, man. My first year of taking our youth group at Flint to CYC was miserable. And it was like nothing went wrong. It was just the fact that we had so many adults on that trip because they wanted to make sure everything went just right. That term, too many chiefs, not enough Indians, was the absolute truth behind that.
I think it's Native Americans, but
however it goes,
indigenous
people. But it was just so many things happening where it's like I needed a kid to do one thing, and while they're doing it, another parent's like, "Hey, I need you to go do this." I was like, "Oh, well, Hunter told me this." Like, no, this needs to be done first. Like, what I needed done needs to get done.
Yeah.
And it was just so many people. And now we see that trust change over the years and spending time in it, that's how you gain that trust.
Yeah.
Is by showing people that you are consistent, you're trustworthy, and that things are going to get done in that time.
And once you've stayed at a place for an extended amount of time, we'll say, 4, 5, 6 years, you start seeing those long-term goals meeting and working out. And as that stuff goes, you start seeing kids that are completely bought in. You start seeing people that are completely bought in. You start seeing families that are completely bought in. And the long-term results is, I don't know about with you guys, but I like to track like how often my students are there, how much they attend, and I keep up with my attendance and stuff. And the longer that I was at a church, the more that my seniors would stay faithful. We graduated the first couple of years. We graduated in the first couple of years that I was there. We graduated, I think, like 16 different kids. It might have been a little more, and I think 4 of them are still faithful, in the church, and they're still doing things. The group that I graduated the last year that I was there, I think of the 12, 11 of them are still faithful and going to church and still involved. And so you start seeing that play out to where you've got your goals are being met, the people they're bought in and they're committed and they're going and it's working out. Your goals are happening and the things that you're working for, which that's kind of what I work for is I want to see mature Christians by the time they graduate with a good understanding of how the Bible works and what the Bible teaches, so that when they graduate, they are prepared to go into the world and continue their faith and not have any hang-ups and not have any things that are going to make them drop out of church or never start attending church to begin with. I want them to be committed Christians, adult Christians, mature Christians when they graduate. So when those times come, they're prepared for them and they know how to deal with them. And the longer that you're at a church, the better that percentage goes up.
So we've talked a lot about longevity. The only thing that I would say that in ministry or that we want brevity in is length of podcast episodes. And I feel like we are at the end of our longevity of this one. I feel like we've talked enough. So I'm gonna shut up and let Michael outro this baby and get us headed out of this thing.
Well, I just want to say we are grateful for you. We're thankful for y'all listening,
Yes.
The commitment that you have toward us, because we feel it. We've been doing this where I think we're episode 13, 14 if you count the Halloween episode. And so I really want to do the scream, but I can't do it.
Just don't do it.
But yeah, I mean, we're just very thankful for you. If you will, go to our website, oksyouthministry.com, check it out, read some of those articles and things. We should have a couple more coming out pretty soon, and look at some of the resources that we offer. A lot of them are free. Some of them cost money.
Hey, let us know what you're thinking about it. Shoot us a message or something, because some of these guys that we know have given us some feedback. One of my friends, Jared, gave me some feedback this week, and it's stuff that we need to know. If there's things that maybe we could be hitting on better or saying in a different way, let us know. We'd love to hear your feedback.
Or if you have questions, you can email us at oksyouthministry@gmail.com. Send us an email. You can go to our website, and it has where you can share information. You can ask the whole question there, and it'll send an automated email to us. So. But we're thankful for you. We're praying for you. I pray about this podcast pretty often, and I'm thankful that I have an audience that are willing to listen to the things that we have to say, and we hope that this podcast has been something good for you. We hope that you continue to listen, continue to support us, and most of all, we hope that your ministry is blessed.
Thanks for joining us today in the important conversation of youth ministry. Go and follow us on Instagram and check out oksyouthministry.com for more information about our upcoming episodes. We'll be dropping a new episode every Wednesday morning, and we look forward to talking with you again next week. And hey, it's okay to be the OKS youth minister around, but let's all strive to be just a little bit better.